Breaking news. 72 killed resisting gun confiscation in Massachusetts. A National Guard task force detailed to confiscate a cache of recently banned assault-style weapons was ambushed by elements of an anti-government paramilitary extremist faction. Military and law enforcement sources estimate that the 72 were killed and more than 200 injured before government forces were compelled to withdraw. Speaking after the clash, Massachusetts Governor Thomas Gage declared that the extremist faction, which was made up of local citizens, has links to the radical right-wing tax protest movement. Gage blamed the extremists for recent incidents of vandalism directed against Internal Revenue officers. The governor, who described the group's organizers as treasonous criminals, issued an executive order authorizing the summary arrest of any individual who has interfered with the government's efforts to secure law and order. The military raid on the extremist arsenal followed widespread refusal by the local citizenry to turn over recently outlawed assault-style weapons. Gage issued a ban on military-style assault weapons and ammunition earlier this week. This decision followed a meeting in early this month between government and military leaders at which the governor authorized the forcible confiscation of illegal arms. One government official, speaking on the condition of anonymity, pointed out that none of these people would have been killed had the extremists obeyed the law and turned over their weapons voluntarily. Government troops initially succeeded in confiscating a large supply of outlawed weapons and ammunition. However, troops attempting to seize the arms and ammunition in Lexington met with resistance from heavily armed extremists who had been tipped off regarding the government's plans. During the tense standoff in Lexington Town Park, National Guard Colonel Francis Smith, the commander of the government operation, ordered the armed group to surrender and return to their homes. The impasse was broken by a single shot, which was reportedly fired by one of the right-wing extremists. 8 civilians were killed in the ensuing exchange. Ironically, the local citizenry blamed the government forces rather than the extremists for the civilian deaths. Before order could be restored, armed citizens from surrounding areas had descended upon the National Guard units. Colonel Smith, finding his forces overmatched by the armed mob, ordered a retreat. Governor Gage has called upon citizens to support the State National Joint Task Force in its effort to restore law and order. The governor also demanded the surrender of those responsible for planning and leading the attack against the government troops. Samuel Adams, Paul Revere, and John Hancock, who have been identified as ringleaders of the extremist faction, remain at large. And this, fellow Americans, is exactly how the American Revolution began, April 19th, 1775. History, learn it or repeat it. Compliments of American Warrior for Christ. Ex-DEA and DIA, retired SOCOM soldier, deep state targeted turned whistleblower warrior, sabotaged and slandered, betrayed and saved, rejected and redeemed. As teacher and truth teller, now America's intelligence officer, resisting tyranny in obedience to God, welcoming like-minded patriots, training next generations to infiltrate corrupted agencies, and St. Martin them, inside out, bottom up. Co-opting conquerors in Christ. Welcome, I'm Jeff Prather, and this is the Prather Point. And of course, that's a little satire spoof there, but what we're going to be talking about today is very relevant. I have a very exciting guest. Why Trump reads the Bible on the air today. Also, June 1st, 2020 to tonight's Trump Bible Ops. June 1st, 2020 is when he held the Bible up, went across the street to St. John's Church. Also, the government's religion is, as according to Tucker, Israelism. But I'm going to refine that a little bit to greater Israelism. I was going with Protestant Evangelical Zionist, PEZ, but that's too long. I like government abbreviations since I'm an old G-man, but I think Tucker really nails it with Israelism. And greater Israelism, I think, defines it. Because there are plenty of Israelis who are against greater Israel as well. Plenty of rabbis. I just sent a query out to Voice of the Rabbis organization, hoping that someone will come on and explain the difference between Judaism and Zionism. And also, Chronicle's conditional covenant was broken. And then finally, we'll get into the SITREP from retired Green Beret Ed Guitron. Okay, so that's what we got going on today. I see you guys on Rumble. Don't see anybody on X yet. But anyway, the big story is tonight, President Trump will be reading the Bible, specifically 2 Chronicles 7:11 to 22 in the Oval Office Tuesday tonight, 6 p.m. Eastern time. And it's kind of funny because this is not Bible study. This is not where he's studying the Bible or reading it daily, which I try to do. My wife does diligently with my kids every night since they were little. This is him publicly reading. This is very similar to the St. John's event where he holds up the Bible. And of course, there's a purpose for this. Why now and why that passage? Because I always tell Christians, if you're going to read the Bible, then start with the Synoptic Gospels. Start with Matthew, Mark, and Luke. Then go to John. Why? Because you're reading Yeshua's own words, Jesus' own words, written and recorded by the apostles. That's the most important part. Earl Jackson, New Testament or Old Testament? Well, obviously, you're not a Bible reader. You should be. Chronicles is Old Testament. All the Zionists are Old Testament. They never quote the New Testament, including all the Protestant evangelicals. And when they do, they quote it wrong. But the Old Testament, the Torah, has been fulfilled, or the Hebrew Bible has been fulfilled by Yeshua HaMashiach, by Jesus the Christ. So it's much less relevant. So anyway, that's where I'd start. But no, he is reading tonight 2 Chronicles 7:11 through 22. Starts off at 11. Thus Solomon finished the house of the Lord and the king's house, and all that came into Solomon's heart to make it into the house of the Lord, talking about the temple. So this is all about rebuilding the third temple, which will result in war, because the spot for the third temple, where the second temple was, is now held by a Muslim shrine. And so I'm going to skip down to 14. If my people, which are called by my name, shall humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then will I hear from heaven and will forgive their sin and will heal their land. So this is what Zionists skip all the time. Of course, I'm a Christian chaplain. I corrected the Darby Schofield version where they changed the Bible, which is a sin, saying Israel, who blesses Israel. It's actually you in all the versions. There's no version except the Schofield where it says Israel. But anyway, in this regard, he says in 18, then I will establish the throne of thy kingdom accordingly as I have covenanted with David thy father, saying, there shall not fail thee a man to be ruler in Israel. But 19 says, but if you turn away and forsake my statutes and my commandments, which I have set for you, and shall go and serve other gods and worship them, then will I pluck them by the roots out of my land, which has given them in this house, which I have sanctified for my name, cast out of my sight, and will make it to be a proverb and a byword among nations. And this house, which is high, shall be an astonishment to everyone that passes by. So they shall say, why hath the Lord done this to us? And it shall be answered, because they forsook the Lord God of their fathers, which brought them out of the land of Egypt, and laid hold of no other gods and worshiped. They laid hold of other gods and worshiped them and served them. Therefore, he has brought evil upon them. It's worth noting that Easter services were forbidden, but now they're going to have the biggest ever LGBT celebration in the Holy Land. That's clearly a false god. So what does that really mean? Well, sorry, as you can see, I'm having trouble with my voice again today. Trump is going to read this, of course, as meaning and context for Greater Israel. Why? Well, because he is dressed up like Jesus. He hasn't studied the Bible. He doesn't know the Bible at all. And he's trying to justify this religious war that is Greater Israel, that he is waging on account of Greater Israel. But remember, the covenant was conditional, that the Jews return from idolatry. They do not. They go back again and do it, and they go back into Babylonian exile. So, and again, of course, in Joshua 21:45, when that finally happens, is all the covenants are already fulfilled. That's the last line of Joshua. That is, the God has fulfilled all his covenants. Therefore, the Greater Israel project is no longer valid. So now I've talked about this, and now I see people coming out and saying, "Hey, wait a minute!" On YouTube, long after I've said it doesn't say Israel in Genesis 12:3. It says you. Israel is never mentioned, and all these other points people are finally catching up with. But anyway, that's really important because what Trump is doing is this is the second op. So the first op was June 1st, 2020, when he walks across from the White House to St. John's Church. They got there's a lot of protesters, and they got to spray some of them. And he holds up a Bible. So that wasn't Bible study either. That was simply a photo op, which it wasn't that big a deal to me. But now, as I see this, and I see what Trump has become, this is clearly another photo op because he's not studying the Bible. He's never read the Bible. So on my Patreon, I've published, again, patreon.com/Jeffrey Prather. You can sign up there at the $5, $10, or $15 level. You can see all the documentation of what I'm talking about here all the time, the details of that. So Trump was confirmed originally as a Presbyterian, married in a Presbyterian church, but then changed his designation to non-denominational Christian. But of course, since then, he has said on video, "I'm not Christian." And of course, he's at the Chabad Lubavitch memorial to Rebbe, can't remember how to say the name. So I think he has converted secretly. Mark Levin, has confirmed that. But this has led to, even though I think he is Jewish, this has led to him developing what looks like a state religion. Now, Tucker calls that Israelism because all our actions are about that. The cover for this, and I agree with that. I just be more specific and say Greater Israel because not all Israelis are in agreement with what's going on. In fact, a lot of Orthodox rabbis are against it, and they're very clear that there's Judaism and there's Zionism. There's the nation state of Israel, which is brand new, and there's Judaism, which has been around forever. But that, of course, is not the Netanyahu, Mossad, Likud party government. But it's important to understand that and grasp that difference. So I would agree with Tucker. I will forsake my PEZ, my Protestant Evangelical Zionist. I thought it was pretty cool. But Israelism is brilliant. Greater Israelism, I think, is more specific. I'll take a look here and see what you guys have to say about that. Likewise, exactly. But it is interesting that he was married in a Reformed Episcopal. He was married in a Reformed Episcopal church and identified as Presbyterian, but then changed to non-denominational. But has since then, of course, said, that he is not Christian. But his religion is Israelism or Greater Israelism. Why? Because everything is done in a belief system for the Greater Israel mission and project. Everything. There's nothing that is not done for that. But the cover religion in America begins to look like Protestant Evangelical Zionism or what mainstream media is saying is white Christian nationalism. That's what we see with Hegseth. And that is forbidden by the Constitution. It was never about separation of church and state. It was the separation of a state religion, as in the Church of England. That's why they left. But it wasn't about the separation of church and state. The first Bible in America was published by Congress for use in public schools, for moral teaching morals, and also for grammar and syntax, because it has complex sentences. If you look at Washington and Lincoln's speeches, they read like biblical verses because they were well versed in the Bible. Trump is not at all. I don't think he's ever read the Bible. I think this will be the first time. But instead of, again, starting with the Synoptic Gospels with Christ, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, well, John's not a synoptic, but Matthew, Mark, Luke, and then John, again, he's starting Torah, Old Testament, Hebrew Bible, Chronicles, very specifically to buttress his case. What does that mean? That means that this has turned into a religious zeal presidency, and that is sponsoring a belief system, a religious war. So Israel's Greater Israel Project is a religious war, is a belief system. Very dangerous type of war because there's no change in belief systems like that. So hope that makes sense to everybody. So I do want to get to my guest. So you hear me all the time talking about current issues, but I wanted to get somebody on that has a similar background to mine, but is much more recent. You know, I'm a dinosaur, and some of you guys say T-Rex. I appreciate that, but I retired in 2009. You know, I've been out a long time. I haven't been in the White House since 2004. So I got an email from, I get emails all the time, but I got an email from a guy saying, hey, your latest episode grabbed me about the false flags operations leading to ground troops in Iran, ripple effects coming from 22 years in the Army and Special Operations, communications and advisory assignments in Iraq, Afghanistan, Colombia, and other places that I will not mention. I've seen how this happens. So he volunteered to guest. So I said, well, send me your DD-214 and send me your CV. So he did. He sent me his DD-214. He's the real deal. In fact, he was in 7th Group like me as well. That's why he worked in Colombia, because 7th Group's been in Colombia for a long time. So he certainly got the chops and the medals and award. I mean, multiple awards. But what I really wanted to get into is a younger person's much more fresh Special Forces Green Beret perspective on what's going on and see if that lines up with mine or not. And it doesn't have to, but I thought, but I've been wanting to do this for a while. And so it was very serendipitous that Javier emailed me. And so we talked, he sent me his stuff. We talked. I'm always wanting to talk. I want to verify guys, and the older guys, we always know somebody in common. He's too young for that, I think. But anyway, so that's what we're going to go over today. I think that'll be real interesting. You guys can ask questions too. So without further ado there, retired first sergeant, is that right?
Sergeant first class.
Sergeant first class. Sorry about that. Edward Javier GUITRON. Am I saying the last name correctly? GUITRON?
Well, it depends. In Spanish, it's GUITRON. And, us white devils, we just say GUITRON. So it's fine.
Ok. Pues puedes hablarnos en español también, pero mi clientes aquí no pueden entender. Por eso vamos a hacer en inglés. So I just said we'll just have the show in English because not everybody here speaks Spanish. But anyway, please go over more the highlights of your career first to establish your bona fides a little bit.
Okay, so I've told every interviewer so far, I can summarize my career as funny, and this is the best way I can describe it, and it's dark humor when I say funny. So I joined the Army. Here's the date, August 2nd, 2001. I literally, all I wanted to do is do 3 years, my original contract, get out, go back to California, get that GI Bill money, and go to college and get a job and raise a family, because that's what Mexican immigrants typically raise you to be. And my parents are Mexican immigrants, and I thought I was going to do that. Well, you know what happened?
Mexicans and Latin Americans are great, hardworking, family-oriented, religious folks. I've always said that.
It's very true. So that's why they want to come over here, and I don't blame them. So September 11th, I don't need to tell you what happened. That pretty much changed the course of my entire history, pretty much my entire career and life. I didn't even plan on going special forces originally. This is the funny part, one of the funny parts. I went to basic non-commissioned officers course in 2008 with an alleged friend. He was a drinking friend. This is one of the reasons why I stopped drinking. Another funny moment. But he asked me someday, hey man, let's meet up. So we do meet up. We meet up in May 2009. Okay. In May 2009, he asked me when he was in Quantico for some training there, doing personal recovery. We drink. I crash out on his couch in a hotel room, and he asked me as I'm leaving, literally, I'm leaving the door to drive back to Fort Meade, and he goes, hey man, can you come back? I was like, what's up? I need to ask you something. And what is it? Hey man, will you go to selection with me? And I was like, well, which one? Civil Affairs, PsyOps, SF? And he goes, SF. I'm like, cool, when do you want to go? October 09. Okay, no problem. I go to selection. He doesn't show up. I call him when I get my phone finally after I got selected and I got my language in MOS, and he tells me, or I call him like, hey dude, are you okay? He's like, yeah, why? Well, you asked me to go to selection with you. You didn't show up. Just wondering if you're okay. He hangs up the phone, doesn't pick up again, doesn't answer my text. I get back to Maryland. We used to play Call of Duty on PlayStation 3. That's how old I am back in the day. And he deletes me and he blocks me on the gamer tag, so I can't communicate with him anymore or play Call of Duty with him anymore. Needless to say, after that, I stopped drinking because I think drinking was stupid. It led me to make dumb decisions, sort of. And also, I stopped playing video games. So that is how I actually became Special Forces Green Beret, by somebody asking me because they didn't want to go alone. So again,
you didn't have to go to language school because you already had Spanish.
I still went. I still went to language school because I think there's a lot to clean up. Because I had a choice. They're like, if you test out of Spanish, we're gonna make you learn French, or we're gonna make you learn Arabic, and I didn't want to. Maybe I should have. Looking back at it, seeing how all the conflicts are emerging now, maybe I should have went back and learned Arabic or Farsi, but I didn't. I just enhanced my Spanish speaking ability, and I'm glad I did it.
Okay. So did you want to say where you're going, or you don't want to say where you're about to go?
No? I don't want to say. Maybe I'll tell you afterwards. Maybe it'll be on the news, and we'll leave it there. But first off, I will say
they speak good Castellano there, con un zeta, not like that Spanglish Tex-Mex stuff.
Oh,
I was a decade on the Nogales border, so I know both. Kyo mano, que hubo hermano, kyo mano, as opposed to Castellano.
Absolutely. Even when I was in Colombia, they're like, you speak Spanish very, differently. I'm like, cool. So I learned their Spanish after about 6 months.
They speak good Spanish.
Mm-hmm. They do. It's pretty. Yeah.
It's pretty. Yeah. Yeah. In fact, I pulled this out just to show you here because, man, there is a huge difference here. This is my original 7th group.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I still carry this. See that? Donde sea, cuando sea, lo que sea. Old First Lieutenant Jeff Prather. Still got that. I'm not coining you. I'm just showing you an old coin.
No, I got you.
But I'd like to get, so let's go over some of your places where you have, so you're a contractor now, an advisor.
Mm-hmm.
You're down in Eglin where 7th is. So you're probably working with 7th, or you're working with the PJs or something like that.
No. So I'm on multiple rosters, and so for anyone watching, honestly, so a lot of people think you get out of the military, you just contract for one company. Back in the day, it used to be that way. You had, Blackwater, Dynacore, Triple Canopy. They all kind of went into like similar umbrellas. And now it's more like, okay, you have Constellus, which they become kind of like the wholesale of security. They're everywhere in embassies and whatnot, doing State Department personal protection details for the embassies. I'm not doing that. That's WIPS. That's World Protective Services. I don't do that. I also, and ultimately speaking, you have to, when you're doing contracting, you have to legitimately understand, is this worth my time, value, and money? Meaning, if they're paying me $450 a day, can I make more? I actually almost went that route until I had multiple friends before I did it. They're like, hey, stop. You can make more doing advising, doing training, and also if it segues, you're able obviously to do the regular security stuff. It's within our pedigree. So I went about that route, and I found it very enlightening. And also it's a small little learning curve at times, but I also know I'm not restrained from some authorities and permissions that I had when I was a green suitor. So in reality, I pretty much work for anyone who's able to do or get the access and placement for that contract. And then they say, hey, you fit this bill. You have the capabilities to go and teach or advise, and I go and do that. So
I guess your TSSCI's current as well.
Actually, because I wasn't in a specific slot to have it when they renewed it, I'm back to a secret because it's just how it goes. If you're not slotted for a TSSCI, you revert back to whatever billeting you're in. And because I'm in a specific billeting that says secret only, that's all I do is secret type work. So.
Well, I was doing some of that when I got out. Yeah. Keep your clearance because it's very valuable. I'm sure you know that. And the company that somebody sponsors to get it updated and upgrade it to a TS if you can. Yeah. So security contractor, CONUS and OCONUS, Special Forces trainer, Special Operations training. That's not SOT. That's not the old SOT I went to. That's something else that doesn't even exist anymore. And then you're a commo sergeant, and you're also a demo sergeant. Is that right?
So here's how it's funny. I went to the 18 Echo course, yes, but they slotted me, and this is where I'm like, even when I got my DD-214, I look at it and I'm like, is everything correct? I'm like, well, almost everything. They just added something. I mean, I was in a slot of it, but I didn't go to the course. Well, is everything else correct? I'm like, yeah. Okay, then we're good. I'm like, okay. So, I mean, yeah, everyone knew demo, but I never went to the 18 Charlie course. So I don't know why it's on there.
Wow. Okay. So in Enduring Freedom, conducted human intelligence, MUMID collection and analysis, targeting link analysis, UW, unconventional warfare, physical surveillance detection. That's good stuff. If you're doing UW and that kind of stuff, that's classic SF stuff. I only did FID, foreign internal back in my day.
So if I could update you, they actually don't even like us saying UW anymore. Before I got out, they were really big on lexicons, and they're like, hey, we are irregular warfare. We teach irregular warfare now. And obviously under irregular warfare, one of the subsets is UW, FID, special reconnaissance, stability operations, and whatnot. So that was, they were really pushing for that when I was an instructor out at NTC into the SOT-D out there, Special Operations Training Detachment West. They were really big in saying, hey, if you say UW again, like basically they were very much like change your language, change the lexicon. So they're big on saying irregular warfare now. So call it what you want. It's the same thing.
So UW and FID are a subset of regular warfare. Both
Correct.
of them.
Yes, they are. So to us, I graduated the Q course in 2012. There was like UW. Definition UW is this. It's still the same definition, but they were really big when I was teaching it as an instructor. They were like, hey, it's irregular warfare. And through regular warfare, you're doing these subsets, and that's what we're inferring and training the training audience on. So I'm like, all right, cool. Tomato. To me, it's tomato. I'm going to go about doing the same thing. I'm just going to call it irregular
That's
warfare.
That's why I'm having you on. I mean, so SOT is now Sephardic or Cephalic. I keep getting them mixed up. I don't even know That's
Yeah, it's cephalic. And actually cephalic is done at a company level now. They don't have like how it used to be. It's like, all right, let's get that whole attachment and advanced
There
skills
is no
company.
Mott Lake anymore.
Oh, Mott Lake is still out there, but I don't
Was
know
it?
what they're doing out there. They're probably doing, you know,
Spooky
scuba
stuff.
recalls out there. I don't know. So
Yeah. So you did counter narcotics theater in Colombia. That's very cool. That's been a seventh group mission for a long time.
yeah.
I was DEA Special Agent Operation Snowcap. We did not go into Colombia, but I know that's a hot and dangerous mission. So that's cool.
Hey, speaking of Colombia, did you read what the current president of Colombia said about cocaine and whiskey?
No.
He said cocaine is just as dangerous as whiskey. Like I'm paraphrasing here, but if you can correct me on it, go for it. But my buddy sent me the actual freaking headlines. Like, can you believe this guy? I'm like, wow, I can't believe he said cocaine is no dangerous than whiskey or something like that. So, just something funny. Like the whole world is at funny languages right now. What they're using with narratives. So that's all.
So was the for me, when I was doing cross-border operations as a DEA special agent into Mexico, that was the most dangerous thing I ever did. Was Colombia the most dangerous thing for you, or was it Afghanistan or something else?
I would say Afghanistan only because, and you've heard the stories. When you're partnered with them, there's some good people out there, but you can say or look at them the wrong way, and they'll. And I unfortunately had a good friends actually. They were attacked by a green on blue incident in 2020. There in Afghanistan, and they just didn't see it coming, and they just turned on them. So that I would say Afghanistan historically, at least for us seventh groupers, I would say that was more dangerous than Colombia, in my opinion. So.
Okay. So I want to get into, since you've worked a lot of these places, I want to get your assessment. You don't even need to know mine, of what looks like. Well, let's talk about what's happened. There was we don't have air dominance, and we had a couple down pilots. There was a CSAR operation or two CSAR operations. PJs and stuff go in and get quickly the pilot, but then later on they get the weapon systems officer, which we still haven't seen. I'm not sure why he's not having parades and being decorated in the White House. Supposedly walks 100 miles. Plus, what I've said is it's obvious that's not how you do a CSAR. CSAR is in and out quick, just a couple birds, because one bird goes down. Putting in MC-130 Echoes and Juliets that are special operations, making runways, all that stuff. That's not a CSAR. It's not a combat search and rescue operation. That looks like it was a failed uranium. It looks like the mother of all tier one operations, where they were trying to go in and get the uranium out of the Natanz facility, out of the mountain. What do you say about that?
Well, here's what I say. And I'm gonna premise this. So even when it was in the regular army, and we were going to Iraq. I remember, and then
you were 82nd.
82nd all the way, baby.
Yeah, you're airborne. That's not the regular army. That's the 82nd. It's not a leg. Come on there.
So as I'm told, before I entered SF, when we're in the auditorium there in Bank Hall, they're like, "Hey guys, you wanted to take the step of being, the regular army to special operations. Here it is." So I'm just using those words. But yes, I was in the airborne, in airborne infantry division, and I learned a lot of good things there for sure. And it was a basis of what made me going into special operations far more seamless than not being there, right? But I asked the question my first time in Iraq in 04. I asked to, just the older guys there. I'm just hearing them talk because that was only my second deployment. And to me, I'm just a specialist. I'm still a new guy, so I don't really talk too much. But I would hear him say, "Dude, check this out. They're going to try to go to Iran someday." And then one of them, more cerebral guy, was just like, "You do realize if we ever go to Iran, it's so mountainous that everyone will most likely die." That's back in 04. Now, I'm in a different unit in Maryland at this time. And then a lot of staff officers there, and they would talk about it. One was actually writing the op plan for Iran some years ago, and they were telling me, do you realize the catastrophic loss of life, catastrophic equipment loss is so numerous that if they ever planned on going with our assessments, it would be like a complete decimation. So in my mind, I kept it. I was like, well, I guess we'll probably never go to Iran, at least to a full invasion, only because, Met TC, if the terrain is against you and then you have these other things against you, equipment, time, and civilians against you, there is no point in even going, in my opinion.
Right.
But that is basic military doctrine that we were taught, right? So I'm not going off of my beliefs. That's going off of institutional, organizational, and doctrine that I was taught. And also by TTPs. If you've been around enough terrain, enough different terrain, especially, you literally, you can just deduce maybe this isn't a good idea. But if the strategic objectives are that high, I don't see I'm trying to look at the 10-year plan of what's going on, right?
Right.
What is the 10-year plan? Not the 4-year or the 3-year, the 10-year. And I don't know it yet. And I can connect the dots of my time and my other other places I was deployed to. And you're like, okay, they failed that. We failed those. We kind of gained that. This is kind of still pending. And I can tell you right now, I'm not really sure. I have no opinion other than I have to let the situation develop. As you know,
quoting Pete Glaber from Delta.
As you know, right? I don't know. I don't have all the answers. So all you can do is literally confirm what you know and also confirm what you don't know and kind of leave it at that. There's nothing anyone can say or do to say, all right, where do we go next from here? I think everyone on both sides and every third side or fourth side can agree this is just a whole mess, what's going on. And it's actually affecting everyone here in the States. And it's more like economic Darwinism what's happening in the States right now. I actually have a friend in California. You know how much the gas is in California right now?
No.
$8 a gallon in some places.
Wow.
How do you survive off of that and mind you, this is California, so I'm going to go in some microeconomics here. How do you survive off of that with maybe getting paid $32 an hour? Mind you, California takes state tax, some places city tax, and then federal tax. How are you supposed to live? I don't know. That's just me.
No, that's a very professional way to say that. I've analyzed this and said this is because we're enthralled to Israel, and Israel wants to do greater Israel. The government there, so that's their objective. But that may be in the interest of Israel, but it is certainly not in the interest of the United States of America. But looking at the objectives, if it was D-Day, catastrophic loss of life, that's D-Day. Did we have to do that? Well, I think we did. Do we have to do this? It would have the same catastrophic loss of life. No, there's no reason to do it because, again, first thing is, can you do it? Well, yes, catastrophic loss of life. Well, then can you hold it? Normandy, could we hold it? It wasn't fun, but yeah, we could hold it. Could we even hold the Strait of Hormuz, those cliffs, Karga Island, where they've got it ringed in, they can shell it and everything? No, we can't. Plus the Marines and the airborne that go in, beach-headed or air-headed, got to be relieved pretty quickly, or they'll just be destroyed. That's my take. But it sounds like, but your take is very professional. But anything to add to what I'm saying there, or disagree with?
No. I mean, I think we're just about aligned, and I'm just coming from a different angle. And I come at it as the people back here. What's the second and third order effects of what's happening? Is the juice worth the squeeze?
Yeah. I
don't. Again, I'm trying to figure out what the 10-year plan is. Obviously, the short term, I can see people are suffering. So if the 10-year plan turns out to be a big gamble and a payoff, okay, maybe I'll be swayed into one way. But right now, I'm very objective, and I just want to look out for my friends, my family, and what's best for them. Now, I will tell you, after about 22 and a half years, do I believe in going for another full-scale war like we did in Afghanistan and Iraq? No. In fact, I'm not saying I don't want my son to serve. I hope he doesn't, because he's got a lot of college that he can get paid for free. And as soon as he signs in that dotted line, doesn't have access to it anymore, right? So I personally want to see him thrive in his own way, but I won't stop him. But my thing is, my 15-month deployment, I'll tell you, in Iraq, I've seen a lot of first timer. Hello, you there? He's off stream.
Okay. I think we are back.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah. You got me? Can you hear me?
I can't hear you. If you can hear me, I'm going to come out and come back in, okay?
Yeah, use Google browser. Okay, so that was a wild one, folks. Yeah, Earl Jackson must be the NSA. My computer just, I don't know if you heard it, 5x5, good, just did this loud sound and then shut down completely. Obviously, we've had a lot of interference in the past, but nothing like that. So, and I thought we were being careful, but can you hear me now?
I'm fine, yes, but I'll make it very succinct. I don't want any. So my first 15-month deployment, that was my third deployment. I've seen a lot of first-time young soldiers die or got hurt, and then even the injured ones, when they left the battlefield, they either ended up dying because of substance abuse issues or whatnot. Here's my thing, and I say this emphatically. I would go back for sure, but the people that would go to do a full-scale war that way, if they were to put a bill or an act that said, hey, you know what, for everyone in Congress, for everyone, even the guys in Northrop Grumman, everyone else, right, all the stakeholders to make a lot of money off of this, or for whatever reason you want to go, send your grandkids, send your kids my age, increase the age level to like maybe 45, because I'm 42. I'll go back if they'll go. And that's, and I say that out of a dark joke, but also, if it's that important for you to want to seize this, then send your next generation of you so they can go ahead and feel what my friends have felt: the self-deletions, the drug abuse, the alcohol abuse. I am lucky have all my limbs. I'm lucky that I'm educated. I'm lucky that I came out of that. Statistically speaking, most people out of my era of the GWAT, they go into recluse, drug-induced, hippie vibes, and it's like strange because you see these guys when they were titans, they were paragons, and now these guys that I still respect as humans because of what they've done for their country, they want nothing part of anything anymore. And my thing is, if it's so important for us to go there, that's cool. If it's that important for us to seize this, fine. But guess what? Send your kids, send your grandkids, send your nephews, and I'll go back. And I say that because I know they won't do it, but I say that because I'm a psychopath and I'll probably go, because I'm going to, I don't know why I'm even going to these places I go to now and do what I do. But I do know.
That's a great point. Is when I was in, and at your age, we don't really think about the ramifications much. I mean, you're much more thoughtful than I was.
Yeah.
But it was just, hey, we want to go because we want to do all this stuff. But it's interesting because, I've had Joe Kent on, which is interesting that you're at Fort Meade. because I was in a unit that he was in. I was in the predecessor that he was in. That sounds like you might be in, which I won't bring up. But I've had on. This is a signed bottle of a horse soldier by retired Sergeant Major Vince McKella. So I've had him on a couple times. Will Cummings, they're the original ODA 595 horse soldiers, the first in guys. Nice. Super cool guys, you know. And they're very well adjusted. They're all selling bourbon now because they say that there were 2 wars, and the white soft 200 or so ODAs via UW, irregular warfare, won that war. Yep. Everybody came home. And then we get into black soft DA, kill everybody, and everybody's screwed up from it. I think that's pretty obvious at this point. And I think you're speaking to my same point.
I will, but also I want to be very careful when I say this. Around the 15-year mark of me being in the military, I didn't want to be in anymore. Okay. And I wasn't, the thing is, I wasn't so verbose about it, but the signs were there. Other people, the signs were there because we can just tell amongst each other. But you know, with them, they just stayed the course. Drug abuse, alcohol abuse. It's actually it's rampant even amongst the ODAs. People don't even pay attention to it. I can tell you right now, because I used to be a bouncer here in town as I was working, because again, I didn't really want to be in the military anymore. So I found other ways to keep my head busy so I didn't do stupid stuff. And I'm telling you right now, a lot of us do this. A lot of us have to, while we were in, we would find other things to do so that our mind didn't go solely to like losing our minds at work. And this is an epidemic that can't be cured. We have to do different things, because the more we think about work, and I'm gonna give you an example. There was a guy I knew, and I'll say it in that context. He was the dude. They sent him to every school, every PDSS, everything. He was that guy. He was the shit hot dude. But you want to know what? It burned him out. And guess what else suffered? Family life.
Yeah.
Social life.
Yep.
And he went ahead and did what he needed to do to escape whatever was troubling him. But he wasn't the only one that needed to do something else. But that's just how wound up we were, how wound up tight we were. And I can't tell you that there's a way around it. I don't know the answer, but I do know this. Around that 15-year mark, I took it and I did what I needed to do, what worked for me. I didn't want to go into a drug overdose. I didn't want to get a DUI and get kicked out. I had to do things what I needed to do, and I'm going to let you know what I did. Around that 15-year mark, I started buying houses in this Eglin area. I have like 10 houses around here, okay? Did I feel like buying that big expensive truck and have that boat and have a bunch of people I didn't like on that boat every weekend in Crab Island? Maybe. A small part of me wanted to do that because everyone else did. But I decided not to. I went the other route. I had to do something to keep me busy in my mind besides being in the military, because if I just kept on with being in the military all the time, I would have done something stupid and I knew it, because I couldn't say no while you're in. While you're in, your soul belongs to the regiment. You really can't say no. You just go. So on my off time, when I had some time, when I wanted to rest, I really couldn't rest. I had to do what I needed to do to keep my mind off of being in the military. And I want you to know there's so many guys that feel the same way, because they talk to me now that are still in. And I kind of might find myself not in a mentoring role, but I got to let them know, hey, it's not as bad as you think. Try this out, because there's more to the military when you're out. But what I mainly wanted to tell them is, remember this, that man made the Green Beret and made that Special Forces tab. That tab didn't make you. So when you're out, when you transition out, you need to understand that no one's going to care. And I can't emphasize this enough. Nobody cares when you get out. You're going to have those guys coming out that say, hey, call me if you need me. I've called some people. You know what I got? Oh, hey, man, how you doing? You said you could help me with this. Oh, I did, huh? Yeah, I'm kind of working on this right now, man. I'm like, oh, okay. So guess what I had to do? I had to go and fend for myself. And the thing is, I'm not coming at you as a victim here. I'm coming at you with nobody has your back other than the people that you actually have a good relationship with. there's networking and there's building relationships. Networking is saying hi, but building relationships is so intentional. Those are the people that say, hey, you know what? I got your back because I know you got mine. But those are people you actually build intentional relationships with. And there's a mass difference. You know what I do not like is the word network. I hate the word network because when you say network to me, it's just saying hi. No,
Yeah.
you want to build intentional relationships because that's what's lasting. That's how the deals are made. And that's how, the jobs actually are attained. And also that's when actual tangible effects happen when you're building relationships. Nobody freaking builds effects off saying just hi and networking. That is crap. And I know it seems like very much like lexicon talk here, but it's
Oh,
to me,
no,
it's true.
it's very true. You remind me of a very old Special Forces poster that said, people don't join us because we're special, but because they are. They already have those inherent qualities. And also, what I always said was, it's always better to make a friend than buy a friend. How do you make a friend? You care sincerely about somebody and their family and their children. You go sit in their house, which I did in mud huts in Honduras and in Korea. But if you can't make a friend, then you can buy a friend. That's what the CIA does all the time. But
I'll tell you a story to that right now, and it's not a story that I'm proud of. So when I was in Colombia, I want you to know I don't like drinking, but sometimes you just have to go. You got to bite the bullet and go. So I went out in town with the guys, and then they all scattered to the four winds. But if I didn't have such good rapport with people in that town I was in, I don't know what I drank. Maybe I was supposed to be a target to be exploited, but the people I was actually friends with in town picked me up. I woke up. I didn't even know where the heck I was. And they're like, hey, we found you here. I was like, how did I get there? I don't know what happened. And then, they're like, well, we knew who you were. People said, hey, it's Javier. He's in trouble. And then we got you. And I'm like, and then I kind of saw the backstory of it. I'm like, oh, really? Wow. And obviously I got pissed with the people I was with. They kind of laughed about it. And I'm just kind of like, you mother effers, I'm never going out with you guys again. And
that was an ODA?
Don't worry who it was. Okay.
So that it sounds like, I don't know if I've had on folks about this. I don't know if you're familiar with Code Over Country or a lot of the SEAL exploits. And of course, you, like me, probably worked with 4 because they're the Latin American team. And I've known some great SEALs, Jason Redmond. But institutionally, it sounds a lot like SEALs. But maybe SF has become like that now. I don't know.
You have some personality. I want you to know, it don't matter if you're in the regular army, in any part of SOF, you're going to have personalities that just want to do what those personalities want to do. I was trying to save I think $100 a day per diem because I always look for future investments, and that's just how always my mind worked. That's just how I always was. Other guys like using that $100 per diem and using every $100 every day. That wasn't me. So, and hats off to people. You work hard for your money. You're more entitled as a man, as an adult, how you want to spend your money. But I had other lofty goals with that money. I already shared what I've done with a lot of that money. So I learned something from that, though. One of them was, I'm really glad I naturally always just wanted to be kind to Partner Nation. Always. It didn't matter where I was always kind to them. Yes. And I would see their family, see their kids, see their cousins. And that's how I actually got embedded with that town I was in. Every time I was out, it's sometimes because I had the money, I would pay for their meals when they were out, pay for their coffee. And they'd always say, I never wanted anything back in return from them. So I definitely cashed that credibility check when I needed it. When I didn't want to use it, they helped me out. And no matter where you're at, it pays off to be kind, because disrespect costs you everything, when reality, respect and kindness cost you nothing. And I can tell anyone, no matter where you're at, you can be with a place full of a bunch of a-holes, still be kind, still be respectful, because disrespect will cost you everything. So,
and that's not how SF does anything. At least in my day, it's all about rapport.
It is. No, I mean, you absolutely want to be very respectful with everybody. And honestly, everybody knew in town, like even all the guys I was with, they knew to be cool with everyone. But I think I went the extra mile, more like how, I'm in the security industry now, executive protection. One of the big things we harp on is customer service. Essentially, when I'm on the job, when I'm on a detail, it's concierge service with a gun at times. Okay. I am no different from, in my opinion, a driver, a butler, even a babysitter. I just have a gun with me and I have a profound customer service. And, I know my boundaries. I'm not going to inject myself in a conversation. I'm just going to be right there. Tell me when you need me to do something. Sir, is there anything else you need? Ma'am, is there anything else you need? Their kids or what? Not otherwise. I'm there to be in a concierge service with a gun if needed, and I'm paid really well to do that, and I'm okay with doing that. So I've always been that way, though. I mean, again, I had immigrant parents. They were always kind to everybody, and I kind of go off of my base of what how I was raised too. So
Yeah, that's very true. From Nogales, Mexico, to Mexico City, to Guatemala, to Honduras, to Panama, down to Bolivia, Argentina, all those places. I have generally found when you're out with the campesinos or something, I've been invited in, to their dirt hut champas to eat meals with them. And, it's great. It's a great experience too. So let's pull back to the mission. So you've got time in Colombia. So I want to know what you think of the Trump administration's South American policy. A lot of it was concentrated on Venezuela. I've worked Venezuela. I've talked about why there's your biggest oil reserves there in Venezuela. But people used to ask me, I was giving speeches, is it going to be the zombie apocalypse? I said, no, it's going to look like Venezuela. And it sort of does look like Venezuela now. But overall, with your time in South America and Colombia and Central America, give me your assessment, the way you did with Israel and the Iran war on Colombia and South America. Because generally speaking, I do support Trump's cartel war. I'm glad, because I was a DEA agent, simultaneously credentialed as a DIA guy, and I saw, the law enforcement cannot wage war against cartel. So I'm
unless you're on a joint task force.
Well, it was JTF 6 during my day.
Yeah,
worked with them. But what's your assessment of the mission now and how it's going?
So a lot of it's open source. So, I'll touch on it a bit here. There's so much that people just don't know about, or it's just so obscured, or they don't care about what's going on down there that they should care about, because those second, tertiary effects of what's happening down there, or what doesn't happen, has affected us, and it's going to affect us in the future. Obviously, we talked about the cartels, right? They just want to make money, but a lot of them are very territorial and they have other lofty goals. But on top of that, they've known to partner with China. They've known to partner with Iran. They've known to partner with other state and non-state actors. Why, in my opinion, South America is the way into America, just like it is up in Canada. So my assessment is, I wish we would put more emphasis on what's going on down there, because there's more going on down there that people will ever know about. And you won't even know about it until you're really there for like maybe 4 months or longer. So you can actually really take in the breadth and depth of the situation, because the people will tell you, not even just through direct verbal, conversation. Most of it's, nonverbal. You're like, oh, why is everyone staying away from here? Why is no one talking to him? Okay. You just sit back and you just see. You just sit back and you just enjoy the view. And even then, when you enjoy the view, you can't do anything, that's what hurts the most, because I know I can't change the world, and I know that, and I say it emphatically, but while I'm on my way out, I don't know how long I'll last. I'd like to take down as many bad actors as I can along the way out. And what's a bad actor? Okay. We can go down the list of, obviously, anyone who's minor, attracted to children, to freaking drug cartels.
That's the top of the list, which is my biggest complaint with the Trump administration and the DOJ.
Obviously, I say that one the most. And then obviously anyone who just wants to do harm to my way of life, our way of life, and my way of life to raise my son. And I want my son in a better future, just like anyone with kids or grandkids. We want our kids, we want our family to be raised in a good place. And anything that impedes that, to me, is a bad actor. So that's how I see it.
And anyone who harms children is an bad actor, an evil person, evil being intentional harm. And
that goes without saying. That goes without saying, Jeff, for sure.
Yeah. And there are so-called allies that are harming children. And I have that on good authority, even though I'm not deployed anymore. So what other areas besides, we've talked about Iran, Israel, Colombia, what other areas do you as a retired SF see important for America? So really what you're saying, you're agreeing with me, is Iran, not important. South America, Central America, very important. That's where we should be. And we just went back into Bolivia. I spent a lot of time in Bolivia. Last place I was ambushed, so I'm glad we're doing all that. But where else? And what else? Because I really find it fascinating what you're saying about the soft community as well.
So I'm not going to crap on the soft community, but I
No,
do know.
No, I don't want, and I'm not. So I see all these shows where they now I have stood up for. I did a lot with PJs and AFSOC. I did stand up for John Chapman because what happened with his stolen valor was a travesty.
Oh God, that was terrible.
Right, because he, and that's the only Medal of Honor recipient ever recorded, on FLIR. But I don't listen to or like all those soft guys that are. They sound like nagging housewives or something going after each other.
And ultimately, though, and this is no knock on them, they're trying to transition themselves. We've all done that. And they're also trying to sell a product. If you want to be into the sales space, I know how sales work. So I know when they're talking, hey, come to this course, buy this coffee, come to this freaking survival course. Okay, I get it. I'm not going to knock that. A lot of them are actually, they have like private Patreons, like, here, pay this and I'll prepare you to go to selection. I'm going to touch on that for a sec. On the secret, on the down low, I was helping support guys pass selection. Okay. And I didn't do that. I didn't get paid any cent of it. You know what I told them? Hey, just whenever you're in a position, just go ahead and train others to do the same thing, because I believe good people need to come in the community. Well, I trained one guy I did not like. And you know what I was telling my buddy recently? I was like, after that one dude made, and he's a Green Beret now, and I'm pissed about it, I would probably go back for free. I don't know where I would do it. If a person really wanted to pass selection so bad, I would do it for free. I would go to the weather station because I have the money to it and I'm fine. I don't need to get paid. And I'd want to make sure that dude passes selection. And that's like, weirdly enough, it's like a weird thing of mine. There's one bad egg that I let in the regiment that I didn't know he was a piece of crap. And he's in the regiment now. And I want to erase that. That's like one regret I do have, is helping this piece of crap become a Green Beret. And
I've seen those guys who have those courses, real young PJs, for example, got 1 or 2 tours. Then they decide to teach how to be a PJ. So they hire some old, I know some Master Chiefs, retired, E8s that, know the whole deal, but they're making this course to bring people in. And so that's an interesting thing. So let's talk about that for a second, because I think there is a cultural change. I forget who he is, the sergeant major in charge of SF has addressed this, is the X-rays have really changed the culture. And I wonder about the maturity level. Now, SF was all, in my day, I got to go in as a young lieutenant, and I wasn't really leading anybody. I was trying to keep up, but the maturity level of the guys I was around, and I was around, some super cool guys, Gary O'Neill, Chad Ballwants, served with those guys. But it seems like the X-ray community, like I think it's like 52% or something, isn't that typical 30 to 33 married, couple kids, and there's a lack of the maturity level.
So, ironically enough, when I was in the Q course, you know who I spent most time with and who were my better friends?
The older guys.
The X-rays.
The X-rays, really?
They were different even when I was in. And they draw on like my experience, and I draw on a lot of the way they saw things. I've always known I didn't have all the answers. I want to really ensure that you know that. I wasn't set in my ways. I'm still not really set in my ways, and I'm 42. And they were better at PT, so I elevated my levels.
Whoop. Man, this is weird today. This may be.
All right, I'm back. I enjoyed the way they looked at the world. They looked at it very objective. And then some of us old guys that we're in with.
If you're an old guy, what am I? I'm a dinosaur.
How about a legend? A legend.
Okay. Hardly.
Yeah, a legend. All right. I just found more in common with them, and they drew on some of my perspective, and I kind of told them like, hey, I know that guy bothers you, but just let it roll. Okay. He has his way of doing things. I have my way. Relax. And they weren't used to the big army isms of multiple views. So what they got with me was, I'm like, listen, I'm not perfect either. Call me out. And they called me out, and I would call them out. And that's how it should be. What they didn't like is some of the other guys that came from the regular army like me didn't like to be called out by them. And I was like, listen, they're not the people you do it with. And, we all have to still peer each other. So you have to be careful who you call out, because some guy can peer you last and say, oh, he's disrespectful, doesn't follow directions. And, that can be a really bad merit on you.
Yeah. So if the audience doesn't know, you get peered by your peers. Everybody's evaluating each other, not just the evaluators evaluating you. Mm-hmm. So you got to always be on. You can't just be on when you're in a leader role.
Correct. But because of that, though, man, I can go on for days about this, but because of that, it allowed people to be really fake. But they knew I was authentic, and they also knew that I got peered out once, because when I was in the Echo course in the end, I was a real dick to some of the people because they weren't doing what they were supposed to in max gain, in our last thing. I passed max gain, and then the instructor takes me aside. I'm like, all the x-rays said that you yelled a lot. I'm like, I did, because they were being dumbasses. And we're like, yeah, I'm just going to throw this out. But hey, just don't do it again. Okay. Just P's and Q's. Don't yell at them. You're about to go into Robin Sage. Just be more diplomatic. I'm like, okay.
That's a very interesting perspective, because I went in as a second lieutenant to 4th PSYOP, which is in SOCOM. And then when I pissed off, and I got an airborne command there, and OPDET that deployed with the Ranger Regiment and 7th Group. That's how I got to know those guys. So when I pissed off my boss enough, they were happy to let me go over to 7th Group. But I was not, then I got transferred to 2nd ID as a captain. I'm like, oh my God, this is the conventional army. I hate it. This is terrible. And I left active duty. So you're really saying that the x-rays are not poisoned by big army isms and everything. That's really interesting.
Yes. But the problem with that is that's a good thing. Here's the other problem with that.
It is great.
When you're going to go and do some like literally intermilitary operations, interconnectivity, interoperability, they don't know how to talk to that captain. Hey, what's up, Josh? Hey, I'm freaking Michael. Dude, you fucking stand. Maybe once you fucking salute him and stand at attention. This is the big army, dude. Even E7 and all, I would still go like, hey, sir, nice to meet you. My name's Sergeant First Class GUITRON. How you doing? First Sergeant, how you doing? I'd stand in parade rest for them. And they're like, hey, relax. But you got to have that decorum. Some of them knew to do that. Others are just kind of like, oh, hey, I got a green beret. I don't need to listen. Hey, I think they learned from those encounters, but also in most cases, as you get one chance to get that first impression. And if you get a bad impression, you get a spoonful of credibility every interaction. You lose credibility by the truckload, though. That's all it takes.
Especially when you're working with forward troops, because sometimes forward troops come from nobility or something. You really got to lay it on with the foreign troops.
Absolutely.
Or American troops.
Correct. But I will say this. I think every x-ray or not, we all know when it comes with partner nation, we do know to treat them with a much better decorum than we treat ourselves. And which is crazy. It's bizarre when you think about it. How do we treat other people better than we treat ourselves? We eat our own, I guess. It's fine. But that's how it is. And, I learned a lot from that. I want you to know, whether I had a funny career or not, because I would tell people, how'd you describe my career? It was funny. Whether I learned from a funny career or not, I learned what not to do. And I also learned things that, brought on a lot of opportunities to where I'm at now and, where I want to go forward. Heck, I didn't tell you this over the phone, but I want to go to law school next year. I want to keep in the fight, but I also know my tendency for necessary violence is there. But I also know I'm pragmatic. I am very pragmatic and I'm realistic about this. I know I can't do that. We have
You're
rule
not
of
going
law.
to join the FBI, are you?
No, I'm not. I'm gonna go to law school. Hopefully one of them accepts me after the LSAT, which is very interesting test to master. And I'm gonna go from there. But I would not have gone to where I'm at if I didn't go through all this. And I'm happy and blessed for my experiences. I've shared some bad ones with you. I'm also sharing some good ones. And where we go in the world, I just want people to know, and hopefully they understand, keep an objective mind, question everything, absolutely question everything. We need to learn how to question things again. Do not have a slave mindset. Don't have a W-2 mindset. I have a 1099 mindset, and I ask people to really dig in on that. And that's what I want my son to grow up and to question everything, to include question me if I'm being dumb. I want him to understand I don't have all the answers, but I will guide my son and guide my friends to the best of my ability to wherever they want to go. If I could know I could help them achieve it. And as far as the world goes, I already told you, I know I can't change the world, but I'm going to bring down as many bad actors, with me as I'm going on my way out. And I don't know when that is. So.
Amen. That is very well. I spent a year in law school before I came. Yeah, I passed the LSAT. A friend of mine was going, so I'm like, okay, I'll go. I'll take the test. Well, I passed. Wow, I got into some law. I hated it, but then I went DEA. So.
Oh. Well, congratulations! Congratulations on passing the LSAT and going to law school.
Yeah. I don't know if you'll like it, but maybe you will. Who knows?
I'm not going to like it though, but I will tell you, in the security industry and the advising and training industry, you and I both know we age out eventually. They're going to want the younger person. They're going to, they're going to want the person who's more relevant. And I stay as relevant as I can, but me going to law school just seems like the perfect segue. And I can be 80, I can be 70, but I'm still working. My mind still works. That means I can still work. And
that's great. I hope also you haven't mentioned it, but I always talk about faith and a lot of the heroes, the real legends that I've had on the show. For example, Ed Morales, my old friend who did UC, he's a hero, the FBI agent, hero of the Miami gunfight, or Chad Ball wants a 595 behind enemy lines, first Gulf War, won't shoot the kids. Eventually, those guys start talking about their faith, and that was the basis for their morality. And I think I see that with you, even though you're not talking about it much. But
I don't talk about it much only because of this. And maybe in the Army you encounter this. You ever met those people? 80-second story. I met this guy. I went to PRC first time, then the second time again. There was this guy, never did anything. He was just that quiet guy. But he got promoted to E4 before me because he kept going to Bible study with all the E5s and E6s. Okay. And he wasn't even religious. He wasn't even religious at all. And I'm like, I grew up Catholic. So when I see that, and that wasn't the only instance I saw that, it let me know. I was like, you know what? I'm not going to wear a cross. I'm not going to get a tattoo of anything faith-based. I'd rather act it, and I'm going to tell you right now.
That's exactly right. All those guys, I had to pull it out like Chad. Super legend in SF community. They didn't talk about it because they lived it. They did it.
Yeah.
He didn't not shoot the kids once. He then didn't shoot the kids again, and again brought everybody on that split team out. They live it. That's a great point too, because I don't know if you're on hearing me talk about that. This white Christian evangelism that is really sponsored by Greater Israelism is very concerning of what's going on.
All that's a lot of concern out there when it comes to religion right now. And, I'll tell you this: I don't belong to any church. I like talking about God, and I do especially with my close friends. And one of the things I told them was, Jesus Christ, if you got to think about it, was the original airborne ranger. Let me tell them why. I was like, and then hear me out on this. He went up to all these dudes and saying, hey, you know what? That's not how my dad liked it. You're effed up. And then also, you got to think about it this way.
He had a 12-man ODA too.
He had a bunch of people that society didn't want, but he's like, if I could show them the way, that means the rest of the world could change. And I think people forget about that. Like, look who he had around him. He had a whore, a murderer, a bunch of other people, a bunch of unsavory social rejects, but he had him around him because he wanted him to spread the good word of his father, of God. And I lean down to the base fundamentals of that. I'm like, think about that. He wanted the worst of society so he can teach them, and hopefully they can spread the word, the good word, amongst everyone, and not collect taxes off of churches and not collect money from people and whatnot. So again, Jesus Christ, the original Ranger. If anyone wants to challenge me on that, I have a finger, maybe this one, with these fingers coming down to tell you otherwise. So yeah.
You know that old joke, guy gets up to heaven and guy's got a ranger beret over there and says, who's that? Oh, that's God. He thinks he's a ranger. No, it's been great having you on. I'm very, by listening to you and your maturity level and your experience level, I'm very relieved and reassured that the true spirit of Special Forces continues. So thanks so much for coming on. And I don't think you're lucky. I don't believe in luck. I think you're blessed like me. I wish you all the best. God bless, and keep doing all the great work you are doing, and come back and talk to us again.
Hey, one last thing. Isaiah 54:17 saved me in every deployment, and that is no weapon formed against me shall prosper. I don't need to say it every day because I want to live it every day, and that's what I believe in every day.
You saw my signature line, Isaiah 6:8. So, all right, brother. Thank you so much, and God bless and Godspeed on what you're heading out to do. Sounds like fun, and we'll have you back.
All right. You take care, brother.
All right. Okay. So very cool. I had to talk around some things. I don't know what was going on with that. My computer started making noises. It shut down. I didn't think we were talking about anything sensitive. Other times we talked about more sensitive stuff than that in the past. But it looks like that was particularly sensitive. I didn't see any questions from anybody, which was kind of surprising. So I just asked my questions, but I certainly got good answers on everything I wanted to talk about. So remember, no comms are secure, but they can be anonymous. Perseverance beats talent every time. Develop the situation before it develops you. Plans are useless. Planning is invaluable, and freedom is never given. It is earned, fought for, won, and taken. So take it.